With the introduction of Rem, the buffs on Violet, and the sudden spike in usage of Fire Charlotte, Banshee 13 has become one of the most popular and essential hunts. Since a lot of us are getting units for free via the Selector and the 70 free summon event, today I'm going to make a short guide on how to one-shot Banshee 13. I'm going to show you guys what team I use to one-shot this hunt, and afterwards I'm going to give you guys some alternative options if you don't have the units that I'm using. With that said, let's get to it.
Grant the power to extinguish the evil. In noise.
The time has come to determine the victor.
Please save us. For victory.
How disappointing.
Alright, first of all, the Cleaver of Wave 1, we have Charles. These are his stats. These stats are catered towards one-shotting the first wave fodder, and it deals enough damage to the boss for it to not go into the splitting phase. You definitely want Charles to be faster than your Baiken. As for the rest of his stats, personally I had a hard time fine-tuning his damage on wave 1 and the boss stage. If he has too little damage, he might not one-shot the wave. If he has too much damage, the boss is going to split. Take your time into gearing Charles properly since he is really essential to this one-shot. As for Mologoros, you definitely want to max both S2 and S3. For artifacts, you want a plus 30 Tonfa or Portrait of the Saviors to make him do as much damage as possible on wave 1. Next up is Shadow Rose, the defense breaker. Shadow Rose is really easy to gear, and she requires no Molagora investment at all. I have her on a crit chance necklace to help with my cleaver on wave 1. Optimally, you want her slower than DN. As for effectiveness, you need at least maybe 80 or 90. She doesn't need that much, since she gets a bonus 50% effectiveness whenever she uses her S3. If you can't reach around 80 effectiveness, go for an effectiveness ring, or you can get one of her exclusive equipments since it gives her bonus effectiveness. For artifacts, I'm personally using Water Gun for the extra damage on both of my damage dealers. If you don't have access to its artifact, then Warhorn is a good substitute and you can purchase it for free in the guild shop. Next, we have the 3-turn attack buffer, DN. There's nothing much to say here. If you're not using her in PvP, give her filler gear and make her faster than your defense breaker. But don't make her too fast. She might lap Baiken on the boss stage and she may trigger a dual attack which can ruin your one-shot. As for artifacts, she doesn't really need any artifacts. But if you're having trouble with the crit chance on some of your units, then I'd highly recommend giving her Midnight Bloom to help boost with the crit chance on some of your DPS units. Last but not least, here's my Baiken. She's not on rage set, but she does have loads of offensive stats to compensate. It's definitely easier to one-shot Banshee if your Baiken is on rage set, since being on rage set means you don't need too much offensive stats. But I'd imagine a big percentage of mid-game players don't have access to a good rage set, so this is a good substitute. Without rage set, it's highly recommended to give your Baiken as much offensive stats as possible. If you can't, you may want to give her 65% effectiveness to let the bleed detonation on her S3 one-shot. A plus 30 Daydream Joker is required for this hunt, and full Molo enhancement on S2 and S3. Here's a good tip. You might want to friendship 10 your Baiken first for the free Mola enhancement, before using real Molagoras to max the rest of her other skills. Alright, you now know the team that I use and their stats, but what if you don't have access to some of these characters? Well, here are some alternatives. For Cleavers, Vivian and Vildred are good cleaver options for this hunt. Vildred can easily cleave the first wave fodders, but when it comes to the boss stage, he is forced to use his S1. And if he does his S1, there's a 5% chance for him to initiate a dual attack. And if he brings Baiken, then the one-shot is pretty much over from there. When it comes to Vivian, she actually can have two roles in one-shotting Banshee. She can be both a cleaver and a 3-turn attack buffer at the same time. Of course, her S3EE of gaining combat readiness is required for this. Next up, alternative options for defense breakers. Free Spirit Tiara and Leo are your next best free-to-play options. Free Spirit Tiara pretty much functions the same as Shadow Rose. She does S2 on the first wave and does defense break on the boss phase. The big difference here is that you would probably need more effectiveness on her since she doesn't give herself bonus effectiveness unlike Shadow Rose. Lastly, we have Leo. Unlike Free Spirit Tiara and Shadow Rose, he does need some mola investment in order to do his job properly, so I would go for the latter option. But if you really want to use him as your defense breaker, I highly recommend to grind him up to Friendship 10 to mola 3 enhancements for free. Next up, we have the 3-turn attack buffers. We have Vivian, Kizuna Ai, Maid Chloe, and Diane. Kizuna Ai is an event hero given for free around last year. If you have her, she can pretty much function the same as Diane. Since her base speed is so low, she needs a bit more gear and speed investment. Maid Chloe is a Moonlight 5 and probably most of you don't have access to her, but if you do, that's great. Both Kizuna Ai and Maid Chloe do not have an active skill 2, so they are forced to do an S1 to the boss stage and they can proc a dual attack. Vivian is also forced to do S1 on the boss phase since her rotation on wave 1 is doing S3 and cleave with S2, but this could be easily avoided if your Vivian has Time Matter equipped. Last but not least, we have the units who can one-shot the boss. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Viking is the most easiest and reliable unit to use for one-shotting this hunt. Don't get me wrong, other units could do it too like Yafine, Ervelyn, Ludwig, Ram, and even Straze. But these units need insane rage set pieces. It's not impossible with these units, but it's really hard for a mid-game player to pull it off. So there you have it, the in-depth Banshee 13 one-shot guide. Personally, I've been using all of my leaf on Banshee during the hunt event. There are a lot of units out there who need lifesteal and counter gear. Resist sets are a nice bonus, assuming they have the perfect substats. And as for destruction sets, well, it's pretty niche but it still has its uses. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and hit subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Hopefully you get good pieces of Banshee gear as well. See you next time.